After a week of devastating floods in the Hill Country, it's now about cleanup and recovery. We'll have the latest from Kerrville and much more today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm David Brown. 2 dead and hundreds rescued as floodwaters rose to record levels for a second time in as many years last week. Concerns now about the effects downstream. In Uvalde, the flooding testing the resilience of a community. We'll hear the latest. Also, with midterms just a few months away, the governor appoints a new person to oversee elections across the state. We'll hear about who the new Secretary of State is. Concerns about how a border wall will affect the dark skies of far west Texas. Also, a spotlight on the great Bob Wills, and much more today on the Texas Standard. No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this 20th day of July, a Monday. And the good news, the rain that hammered the Texas Hill Country for much of the last week has finally eased. But the nightmare is far from over. 2 were killed in last week's flooding and hundreds were rescued, a sharp difference in the casualty numbers compared to those of last year's flooding. Today, across a wide stretch of the Hill Country and into South Texas, communities are shifting from rescue to recovery. Families are returning to homes filled with mud, ruined furniture, and water-soaked walls. In Uvalde, some homeowners say they're already hauling away trailer loads of belongings that can't be salvaged, and many face months of repairs before they can fully be back home again. We'll have more from Uvalde in just a few moments. At the same time, not everyone has been able to return at all. In Concan, scores of people were reported still stranded on Sunday after floodwaters there washed out crossings and damaged roads. Some families have been relying on military deliveries of food and water while they wait for rivers to fall and transportation routes to be inspected. The flooding also became an early test of the warning systems put in place after last year's catastrophic Hill Country disaster, then described as one of those once-in-a-century events, remember? In Kerr County, new flood sirens sounded this time around, and emergency alerts did appear to reach many residents' phones. Local officials issued evacuation warnings much earlier than they did a year ago. Many residents say those changes made a real difference. But last week's flooding also exposed continuing gaps, with some communities reporting little or no warning before water entered their homes. And the danger isn't completely over either, the water danger we're talking about. Downstream, rivers remain swollen, reservoirs are under pressure, and emergency managers continue watching communities that have little capacity to absorb any additional water. At the center, once more, Kerr County. They're confronting the enormous task of cleaning up after a second round of devastating flooding in as many years. Here to tell us more, Camille Phillips, who visited Kerrville to report on the flood damage for our partners at Texas Public Radio in San Antonio. Camille, welcome back to the Standard.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about where you were over the weekend and what you saw.
Yeah, I traveled up to Kerrville and, just saw all of the debris left behind. The crews had just pretty much finished cleaning up after a year, and it's all back there. It was along Francisco Lemos Bridge that covers the Guadalupe River. It's a lower bridge than the Sidney Baker Bridge, a little bit further down river. Mm-hmm. And I could see, there was a huge barge. I think I've heard other people talk about it that just went over the Lemos Bridge and got stuck under the Baker Bridge.
Wow.
And yeah, you could see construction workers trying to figure out how to move this barge that's now stuck there on Saturday when I was there. And then I talked to landowner there named Vinny Mifsud, who his property kind of became part of the recovery effort last year. Several victims from the flood washed ashore there, unfortunately, and it kind of became a staging ground. He, just talked about how there was a lot more alerts this time, a lot more warning, so people were able to get out. But still, you can see, he took me on a little tour, and you could see there's branches really high up that were shorn off. There was bark off the cypress trees, and it's just the level of the flood, the water was still devastatingly high.
I can remember some of the most affecting descriptions from last year. There would be fences that would have caught like the personal effects of families' lives, dolls, clothing, just almost like, cages there with all of this debris. The stories of people's lives, in a sense, just caught in the lattice work. Was that similar to what you saw this time around, or had the cleanup already, was it cleanup already well underway?
No, cleanup hasn't gotten there yet. I saw soccer balls. I saw stuffed animals, several kayaks wrapped around trees. But, like Miss Sood said, there's a lot fewer sleeping bags and tents and things like that. So signs that fewer people were like actually sleeping along the river.
I would imagine, though, that after a year's worth of recovery work, to have to, in a sense, feel like you're starting all over again. Did you hear much on that point from locals?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of, okay, now we've got to figure out long-term how we address things differently. Mifsud is an example. He is not building any property along. He has just land there. He does day things, and we've heard from other business owners who say, we'll use the land along the river for recreation during the day, but we're not going to have any kind of permanent structures or sleeping, along this. And there's also people, I visited a neighborhood along Town Creek, which is a tributary just above Guadalupe River. It feeds in right around the Lemus Bridge. And that neighborhood was not flooded last year, but was flooded this year. And so just the different way the rain came, it affected different areas. I talked to 3 different homeowners who were just devastated cleaning up their house, and volunteers, scraping mud, lifting heavy waterlogged appliances, and the recovery effort.
And some people are not yet back in their homes. What are you hearing about what folks can do on the outside to help those affected?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of been waiting, over the weekend. Some people were waiting still to dry out. But also, I talked to some volunteers in Kerrville who said they didn't see the same high level of response. So they actually do need some volunteers this year. I mean, you may want to give a call to an operations center and just make sure that they're accepting volunteers. But last year, I think there were so many people trying to show up and help that they were turned away. And it doesn't seem to be that same thing happening this year. There's still a level of actual people on the ground to lift heavy things and help sort through wet belongings.
Well, we're going to have a link to more so folks can find out more and find out what options are available to assist over at texasstandard.org. Camille Phillips continues to track this story. She was in Kerrville over the weekend for our partners at Texas Public Radio in San Antonio. Camille, thanks so much for the update.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Kerrville and Kirk County, they've been getting the lion's share of attention because of what happened there last year, of course. But in this year's flooding, well, some of the worst hit places include Zavala and Uvalde counties, where it's estimated hundreds of homes were destroyed or damaged. Dylan Duke of KERA reports now on the resilience of communities there.
It's Saturday morning at the Zavala County Nutrition Center in Batesville, about 20 minutes from Uvalde, and dozens of residents are helping distribute clothing, food, and essentials to people displaced by the flood. Jesse Rizzo told KERA helping out is all he can do to keep himself together at the moment.
The sad part about this is, as I come into the building to help out, you got to look strong. You got to show a certain image.
Like many in this community, Rizzo is all too familiar with tragedy. On May 24th, 2022, his 9-year-old niece was killed in the Robb Elementary school shooting. Now, 4 years later, Rizzo is left dealing with another devastating blow. But right now, he's focusing on the people he's helping.
You can't let them see you break. You break in your own time, but not in front of them. That is hard.
What's not familiar here is the flooding itself.
I've been here all my life, and I've never seen the water that we saw in this flood.
That's State Representative Don McLaughlin, who was mayor of Uvalde for almost a decade. He estimated 300 to 500 homes have been destroyed in the city of Uvalde alone. The floodwaters cut across a wide swath of Texas and arrived just over a year since the July 4th flood that killed more than 130 people, mostly in nearby Kerr County. In 2025, Uvalde and the surrounding areas were largely spared. Still, according to McLaughlin,
I'm sad to say, but I think Kerrville was a wake-up call for everybody the flood of last year. And so people were prepared.
The sheer amount of water and the force of it damaged a lot of the area's older infrastructure. A large part of Highway 481 broke off, completely blocking the connection between Eagle Pass and Uvalde.
I think you're going to see a lot of bridges that have been there 30, 40, 50 years have sustained damage if they're not gone.
Batesville resident Myra Gonzalez said her mobile home was turned into an island by floodwaters. They crept up slowly throughout the night, she said, and before she knew it, the water was at her doorstep.
I hadn't been able to get any kind of groceries or anything for days because, all the roads were closed.
While nobody was hurt in the town, she says the extensive damage to personal property has taken a toll on everyone, and helping out at the nutrition center helps keep her mind off her own problems.
Then I'll just kind of go for a little quick drive with my son, and I'm just like letting it out, and then I'm like, okay, got my head back together, let's go back and let's get our game face on and let's keep working. That's all you can do.
For Jesse Rizzo, it looks similar to how the community behaved after the Robb Elementary shooting. At first, everyone came together and supported each other, putting all differences aside. Then, as everyone returned home and the noise died down, reality set in. That's when help is needed the most, he said.
It could be tough, man. It's a long journey. Long journey.
I'm Dylan Duke in Dallas.
And joining us on this Monday, audience and engagement editor Wells Dunbar with the latest talk of Texas. Hello there, Wells.
Howdy, David. Great to be with you. The question this week, what have you learned about flooding from living in Texas? Obviously inspired by the recent anniversary of the 2025 Independence Day floods and the ongoing return of floodwaters to hard-hit areas in central Texas and those new parts of the state hit this go-around like Uvalde, as we just heard. Maybe it's a lesson about turning around at high water, paying attention to warnings, helping a neighbor, or even just understanding how quickly familiar roads and rivers can become dangerous. Whatever it is, we want to hear it. We're already hearing from folks online. On the Texas State Parks subreddit, a user reminds us Mother Nature is the most powerful force on Earth, regardless of what humans think. She gets a vote. And if you're not prepared, you're at the mercy of someone else, whether it be for rescue, necessities, care, or shelter. Many more illuminating comments, and I'll be back with more of those thoughts and responses, including how our listeners can have their own voices shared on the Standard at the end of the broadcast, David.
Wells Dunbar with Talk of Texas. Coming up, a tale of two data centers and a developer who claimed because county officials didn't act on their development plans within a 30-day window, they should automatically get the green light to begin construction. Were they right? We'll find out in a moment when the Texas Standard returns, coming up on 19 minutes past the hour.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Monthly, producer of Where the River Took Us, a podcast about the July 4th floods from survivor Aaron Parsley's perspective, through the voices of his family and others, telling the story of grief, healing, and survival. Available on all podcast platforms. Support for Texas Standard comes from HEB and the My HEB app, which is available for download, and shopping fresh departments like seafood, produce, bakery, and deli, and scheduling curbside pickup or home delivery. More at HEB.com.
Business and your money on the Standard. I'm David Brown. In a state where data centers have been sprouting up like so many bluebonnets after a spring rain, or mushrooms, pick your metaphor, a Hood County judge has put the brakes on, at least temporarily. KERA's Emmanuel Rivas reports this ruling clears the way for county officials to continue reviewing the proposed developments.
The developers argued two proposed data center campuses should be automatically approved because the county missed a 30-day deadline. The county argued the deadline did not apply here, and a judge ultimately agreed. Laura Crawford is a founder of Protect the Paluxy, an anti-data center group in Hood County.
I think it's a big win for us that the projects are saying that they fall under the rule of law and the 30-day shot clock, and they would be automatically approved if that were the case. The court sided with Hood County.
The proposed data centers have drawn criticism over concerns about water use, infrastructure, and preserving Hood County's rural character. I'm Emmanuel Rivas in Dallas.
And you are listening to the Texas Standard. 1-0. Need I say more? 7% of the Earth's population, nearly 1.8 billion people, watched the World Cup final yesterday. The championship winning goal for Spain coming in the 106th minute. A final gesture from the Argentine team during the medal and trophy ceremony, drawing widespread condemnation, also drawing commentary from around the world just how American the whole affair felt. With so much of this World Cup tournament unfolding in Texas throughout it, we've been getting updates from Jimmy Moss and Juan Garcia, hosts of the soccer podcast Vamos Verde, produced at our home station KUT, and we got to have them back in for one more look at how this whole event wound up. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Thanks,
David.
for having us.
Did you pick up on the sort of Super Bowl vibes, or was it just the rest of the world?
Certainly not lost on me.
I don't know how you could miss it. From Post Malone poorly lip syncing in the beginning in the pregame show. He wasn't the only one. There were several artists lip syncing poorly. It's just he's the one with the Texas origin. So, but there was so much going on that pitch. It felt very much like a Super Bowl. The thing is,
was this a first of its time halftime show? Was that the first time they've ever done?
Never before done, and I felt like they were trying to cram, so many World Cups of halftime shows into one halftime show that
they were making up for lost time.
Yeah, everyone was on for about 16 seconds per artist. It was a really
you got a lot of people in there: Madonna, Shakira, BTS, right?
Yeah, with the mixed media, they had like pre-taped video. They had all kinds of things happening. I don't know if it worked on any level for anyone in particular. I don't know if anyone actually enjoyed it, but
I don't know. President Trump was there, right? And I think he was, he was enjoying the celebrations. In fact, I think he handed out the medals to the Spanish national team, right?
Yeah, he did. He handed out a lot of things. I don't know if he knew who any of the players were who came up. He has said throughout the World Cup, admittedly, he said he does not know that much about it, but his son Barron has kind of kept him informed on things. But without the soccer whisperer behind him, I don't know if he knew who anybody he was shaking hands with. He was literally shaking hands with the greatest soccer players in the world, but had no clue who they were. And likewise, I don't know if the soccer players may have known who Gloria Sheinbaum or anybody else down the Canadian Prime Minister. They seemed aware who Donald Trump was, but beyond that, I'm not sure.
I get a sense that Jimmy had some thoughts on this. Juan, what about your reaction to all of this?
Well, I was unlike Jimmy, I was more focused on what was going on the grass. And,
there was a lot of time to ponder other things in the first half.
Enough,
so.
Yeah. And you know what? That game went pretty much exactly as I would have predicted a match between Spain and Argentina going. Spain, they finally showed who I thought they were before the tournament, and they just suffocated Argentina.
Mm-hmm. They did, yeah. And I think it worked to Spain's advantage just to keep going and doing what they do. They play a very strategic, without, to just gloss over it way too high. A team game, like they weren't waiting for individuals, and they didn't get off of their game versus like England did. And Argentina kind of got, goaded them into a scrappy game in the semifinal, and England lost as a result. Spain didn't do any of that. They just said eventually a goal will come. We don't know when, we don't know how, but
and
we're just
exactly what happened.
Well, but the weird thing, after the 90-minute mark, and now you're going into an additional play. It looked like there was the possibility that Argentina, which had not even managed, I don't think they had managed to
zero shots,
not a single one,
0 shots, right? That they might actually win the game on penalties. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, if it had gone to, so Spain scored in the second half of extra time.
Yes, they did, but if they had not,
it would have gone to penalties, and then there is, that's a lotto. I mean, essentially, like, who has the better nerves? And Argentina won their World Cup last go-round in 2022 that way. They won in penalty kicks over France. So,
say what you will about Emiliano Martinez. There are probably very few goalkeepers on the planet that you would rather have between the sticks in a high-pressure penalty shootout than that Argentine goalkeeper.
That is almost an art piece in itself. If you don't, he is Google Argentina's goalkeeper for penalties, and you'll watch his antics are beyond normal. It's hilarious.
It is an art. He is the artist.
Yeah. Basically, he gets you off your game, and inevitably, someone who you think is going to make a pressure-filled kick misses, and that is his skill.
Juan, were you rooting for Spain or Argentina here in this game?
David, I'm a professional. I cannot confirm nor deny either way.
Okay. All right. That's all right. I'll take you there. What did you make of Argentina turning their backs on Spain there during the closing ceremonies? I
understand that tensions, pressure, the emotion of the moment can be very high. It was, a disrespectful gesture to a rival in something that's kind of supposed to be the example of sportsmanship and bring people together. That said, there are always examples of poor sportsmanship in every major tournament. Disappointed, sure. But who am I to tell the Argentine national team what they can and can't do?
There are so many crossovers between them. There are several players for Argentina that play in Spanish league. They are teammates of many of the players across the field from them.
A lot of awkward locker rooms.
There is, there's the Barcelona tie between Messi and, most of the Spanish team.
Yeah.
Most of them grew up idolizing him as a player. Now they're playing against him. So, this will be ironed out over time, but it is always tough to ask a team that was just defeated in the most emotionally devastating game of that moment to sit around and go, you should clap for them now.
Yeah, for a lot of these guys, this is the only time they are ever getting this close. This could be the only World Cup they ever play in to begin with.
And it is sort of a sunset on Argentina and a sunrise on Spain's team. Yeah.
Jimmy Moss, Juan Garcia, they're hosts of the soccer podcast Vamos Verde, which is produced here at our home station, KUT. And they have a lot more to say about this, as you can clearly tell. We encourage you to check out the podcast. Gentlemen, thanks so much. It's been quite a run.
It has. Biblical, 40 days.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Round Rock ISD Virtual Academy, offering virtual and hybrid classes for self-motivated high schoolers throughout Texas, with more than 50 courses, including advanced placement and dual credit. roundrockisd.org/virtual academy. Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a Texas-based workers' compensation provider committed to providing care and support for injured employees. More at texasmutual.com/TexansDeliver.
I'm Shelby Rose in the Texas newsroom. Tropical weather is headed to Texas. Cameron Young with the National Weather Service in Houston says they are monitoring a tropical depression south of the Florida Panhandle that is turning west.
We do expect it to strengthen into a tropical storm probably over the next day or so. It's still trying to get organized out over the eastern Gulf.
He says the projections are for the storm to start making an impact in Texas late Thursday into early Friday. The Defense Department has identified a Texas woman as one of 2 soldiers killed last week during a strike in Jordan. 19-year-old Isabella Gonzalez of Carrollton was assigned to an air defense unit in Germany. She was deployed to Jordan to help defend against missile and drone attacks during the ongoing war with Iran. And SpaceX has announced the next test flight date for its Starship rocket. KEDT's Rob Boskamp has the latest.
SpaceX officials in a statement said that they will make the second attempt at Flight 13 on Thursday from the city of Starbase. Last week's scheduled launch was scrubbed just seconds before liftoff after the rocket had issue with some of its engines. Launch window for Thursday is set to begin at 5:45 p.m. I'm Rob Boskamp in Corpus Christi.
Plus, the flesh-eating screwworm continues to spread. The parasite is now reported for the first time in the Rio Grande Valley. Texas Public Radio's David Martin Davies has more.
Starr County officials confirmed the border county's first New World screwworm case in a baby calf in the western part of the county. Part of Starr County is already under an active quarantine zone due to a prior detection in neighboring Jim Hogg County, triggering strict livestock inspections before animals can be moved. The New World screwworm is a flesh-eating parasite that lays eggs in open wounds of warm-blooded animals, including livestock, pets, wildlife, and people. To combat this, the USDA and state officials have released sterile flies to naturally interrupt the breeding cycle to stop the spread. The United States eradicated screwworm in the 1960s, but it reemerged in Texas in a calf in Zavala County in June. I'm David Martin Davies in San Antonio.
And more than 1 in 5 Texans with student loans are in default. That's according to a new data analysis by the Associated Press. And Texas leads all states in the number of those defaulting at almost 900,000. Defaults were suspended during the pandemic, and banking expert William Chittenden is with Southern Methodist University's Cox Business School.
During the Biden administration, when they were looking at these loan forgiveness programs, then it became ingrained for the students that the government's telling me I'm not going to have to pay it back, so why shouldn't I believe them?
Nationally, there's a record 9.2 million college borrowers in default. I'm Shelby Rose in the Texas Newsroom.
You're listening to statewide news from public radio stations across Texas. This coverage is only possible because of support from listeners like you. You can help sustain and grow Texas news coverage by donating to your local public radio station today.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm David Brown. In just a few months, voters across the U.S. will begin casting their ballots in the midterm elections. No doubt this will be a consequential event, the first major election since President Trump returned to the White House for a non-consecutive second term. Last week, President Trump made a speech to the nation warning of election security issues, something that Democrats claim the president is overhyping. Against this backdrop, the person in charge of overseeing the midterms in Texas recently announced her resignation, and late last week, Governor Abbott named her replacement. With more on this story, we're joined now by Andrew Schneider, senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media. Andrew, welcome back to the Standard.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the person that the governor has just named, we should point out that the person in charge of elections in Texas is the Secretary of State. Tell us more about the outgoing Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, who just stepped down. How long was she in that position, and any word on why she's leaving?
She's been in that position for a few years now. She had previously been the long-serving state senator from Flower Mound. She'd actually been one of the longest-serving members of the upper house. It's not entirely clear why she's leaving, although there has been some tension between her and the Republican Party of Texas over the last year. The state Republican Party had been pushing to try and close the state's primaries. The primaries have been open, so in other words, you can vote for whichever party you choose. If it goes to a second round, you are restricted to voting to the same party that you voted for in the first round. But the Republican Party leadership and also State Attorney General Ken Paxton, who filed a brief on behalf of the Texas Republican Party, had been arguing that there's concerns about voter crossover. In other words, Democrats or independents trying to vote in the Republican primary in order to influence their choice of candidates. The Republicans have been arguing that this is something that restricts their freedom of association under the First Amendment. There's very little evidence that this is happening on any kind of mass effect. But Jane Nelson, as Secretary of State, had filed a motion to have this case thrown out. She had been fighting this, that this was open primaries are the law of the state. She said that she was obligated to defend that. When she resigned in June, at the beginning of the month, that was seen as something of a victory by the state Republican Party. In fact, outgoing state party chair Abraham George, during the state Republican convention, claimed that as one of his signal accomplishments.
Very interesting. And I know that the Trump administration has also been pushing secretaries of state nationwide to share state voter rolls. Where was she on that?
Well, the state of Texas did wind up sharing its voter rolls. That was somewhat controversial at the time. She actually sent a letter to federal officials about concerns about using records in terms of the legal status of voters as a way of checking up with voter rolls, saying that they might not entirely be accurate. But she said that it was her job to fulfill the law as required by the state.
So clearly some tension between this Republican Secretary of State and at least the Texas Republican Party. Let's talk about who the governor has decided to appoint to replace Jane Nelson. What do we know about the incoming interim Secretary of State?
The interim Secretary of State is a man named Robert S. Howden. He has a long record of serving Texas Republican governors. Governor Abbott is actually the fourth Republican governor that he has served. For the past 2 years, or nearly 2 years, he has been he's been Governor Abbott's legislative director. Prior to that, he had served as, among other things, the head of the Texas Association of Manufacturers and the NFIB Texas, so two of the leading business organizations in the state. He is generally seen as a business-friendly conservative. That is one of the other responsibilities of the Secretary of State is overseeing business licensing. And it's not entirely clear where he stands on the various different issues in terms of things such as whether to keep the primaries closed or open. But for the most part, he's generally seen as a safe pick in terms of continuing Jane Nelson's legacy.
But of course, picking up at this point in the game with just months away from the midterms, obviously something that Andrew Schneider is going to be closely watching as senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media. Andrew, thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Realtors, providing representation at every stage of the home ownership journey, helping clients understand their options and manage complex transaction details. Info at texasrealestate.com.
It's not just about the brisket or the ribs or the sausage or even the sides. It's the culture and people who are passionate about it. Where there's smoke, there's Daniel Vaughn, Texas Monthly Barbecue Editor. Make sure to join us Thursday on the Texas Standard.
Support for Where There's Smoke comes from HEB.
At this time on our broadcast, we hear our segment This Week in Texas Music History. Unfortunately, we can't play it here on our podcast because of issues with music streaming rights. However, you can find it over at texasstandard.org or find a version on Texas Standard's Facebook or Instagram page.
Among the many reasons people love far west Texas is the dark skies over the Big Bend region. If you've never seen a sky like that, filled with bright stars, I highly recommend it. And yes, you can see the Milky Way. The skies are some of the darkest in the continental U.S., and the McDonald Observatory, which calls the region home, relies on those dark skies to study deep space astronomy, including dark energy, map distant galaxies, and discover exoplanets, just to name a few areas of research. But many in the region fear President Trump's plan to build a new border wall in the region will flood the area with bright light, and dark sky defenders are sounding the alarm. Katrina Miller covers science for the New York Times, and she joins us now. Katrina, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, what did you learn about the importance of protecting dark skies in West Texas?
So, West Texas is home to the largest dark sky reserve in the world, and that enables cutting-edge astronomy research at McDonald Observatory in Jeff Davis County. And it's also strengthened a decades-long commitment from residents in the Big Bend who cherish and culturally identify with the ruggedness of the landscape, and part of that includes the darkness of the night. So the Dark Sky Reserve consists of several smaller sites that are certified as dark sky places, including Big Bend National Park and the Big Bend Ranch State Park. And so many people down there see dark sky preservation as a means of not only protecting the land below it, but also protecting a way of life and a means of sustaining that livelihood.
Well, you talked to people who use the phrase dark sky maintenance to describe how West Texans keep light at bay. What does that mean?
There are very specific guidelines for protecting and maintaining the natural darkness, and it pretty much consists of thoughtful outdoor lighting. So having nighttime lighting that is controlled, like targeted or shielded, only as bright as necessary, not excessive, even motion sensor lights, and also more reddish or amber colored rather than blue, because blue light causes more of a glow in the night sky. So all of the places I visited in the Big Bend had very intentionally designed nighttime lighting.
Well, there's scientific impact, too. How could the McDonald Observatory that's nestled in the Davis Mountains be affected?
Right. So if the lighting that comes with the border wall is widespread enough, it could diminish the quality of observations that can be collected at McDonald. Right now, a team of scientists using a telescope at the observatory are on the cusp of releasing a really big result related to dark energy, which is the force that's currently causing our universe to expand at an accelerating rate. And that type of inquiry about our universe requires some of the darkest skies possible to pursue. So any artificial light ends up degrading that data and the ability to make discoveries with it.
Well, what do we know about the lighting that's planned for the border wall and other border barriers? I know where I am in El Paso, some of that lighting is really bright, and there are also these mobile stations that move around and flood certain areas of the border with very bright light as needed.
The information keeps changing. Customs and Border Protection has a map on their website showing the current status of the border wall construction as well as future plans. But every time I've looked at that webpage, the map shows something different. So most recently, CPB is planning to build roughly 170 miles of wall along the U.S.-Mexico border in West Texas, right up to the edge of the state park. As far as what lighting will come with that, it's very unclear. During my reporting, CPB told me that the wall would include a mix of lighting based on location and operational needs. Not all parts of the wall would be lit, and in remote areas, they would forgo visible lighting and instead use things like infrared illuminators. But they didn't give me any specifics on what would be built where. That uncertainty, understandably, has dark sky advocates in the Big Bend region very uneasy. Before you even get to illuminating the wall itself, people are very concerned about what lighting will come with construction or the road upgrades or the establishment of surveillance and maintenance stations. Actually, someone in Presidio sent me a photo this week of extremely bright lighting that had been turned on for security purposes at a staging site where a company had set up shop just to prepare for the wall construction.
Have Big Bend area residents had any success getting the Trump administration to reduce wall illumination and also all that infrastructure illumination you were talking about, or to use a different kind of lighting like the residents who live there do in that region?
In May, CPB did state that the lighting would not be installed within the state or the national parks because of environmental concerns, which is a milestone win, right? But I have not seen any official statement about reducing the lighting along the border wall more broadly in Texas. I think it's also important to note that the effort to reduce lighting associated with the wall is in many ways part of a bigger movement to stop construction of a wall in the Big Bend region altogether. And so for many residents, fighting to maintain that natural darkness means opposing the wall, whether it's illuminated or not.
Katrina Miller is a science reporter for the New York Times. Katrina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Support for Texas Standard comes from HEB and the My HEB app, which is available for download, and shopping fresh departments like seafood, produce, bakery, and deli, and scheduling curbside pickup or home delivery. More at HEB.com. Support for Texas Standard comes from UT San Antonio, providing education and research for communities across Texas, with a focus on student success and workforce development. The University of Ambition, utsa.edu.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. We began today's big broadcast talking about the second devastating round of flooding in the Texas Hill Country in as many years. Right now, many communities again picking up the pieces, just as some were wrapping up recovery from last year's floods. Dondi Persine and her husband have spent the last year trying to reunite people with lost belongings. They started a Facebook page called Found on the Guadalupe River, and it has more than 57,000 members. Persine and a group of volunteers have been processing the items they found in a small warehouse in Ingram, about 15 minutes from Kerrville. She spoke with Texas State student Sydney Orman earlier this year.
That's really how it started. We went out to search and then quickly realized that it was better for the professionals to do that. But, found a way to be helpful. And at the end of the day, I had a lot of people's items, and I just knew that if I put them on Facebook, it took off like wildfire. And on the next day, the media had already reached out. Like a week or two in, the New York Times was following me around. So it spread really quickly, and the idea spread, and then everybody was just trying to help find things and reunite them. These are items that have been photographed, put online, and are waiting to be claimed. I started in my car. It was like in my car, and then my barn, and then I'm driving around with bins and dropping them off at all the places. And then before you know it, I had all my members meeting me at the laundromat. Then we took over the whole laundromat. And then we got this warehouse. Then they brought us all the stuff, and it was wonderful because then we could get it all clean, and it's all in one spot. We put them through bins of vinegar. We rinse them. Vinegar is like ancient, killing germs. It's cheap and it kills germs, and it's great. We do vinegar first and rinse it a couple times, pre-soak it, take it to the car wash, clean it with the car wash, then wash it multiple times at the laundromat. That's for textiles. But we also get hard goods like household goods, saddles, art. Firefighters and the police needed to focus on finding the missing people, not on cleaning t-shirts from camp. But these t-shirts from camp matter to somebody, and in some cases they're the last thing that they have left. There's like dear mom letters, business things. This one right here, I think. Happy birthday, mommy. I have this in my kitchen. I have this painting that I picked up a long time ago at a thrift store, and it says, "Wash the plate not because it's dirty, but because who it belongs to." And it's I think a Mother Teresa quote. I always thought that was really sweet, but I put it above my plates, and I don't actually like to do dishes. But after that, it's just like it gives a whole new meaning to cleaning things. Like it becomes this act bigger than you. It's more about the people who it's for than we're doing this because I would want this to be done for my family.
Dondi Persine spoke with Texas State student Sydney Orman earlier this year about her efforts to reunite people with belongings lost in the 2025 flood. Now Persine's using her social media presence to help out in the latest flood, getting shop vacs, dehumidifiers, and other immediate needs to those cleaning up homes and businesses. Hey, let's bring back audience and engagement editor Wells Dunbar, who's been tracking the talk of Texas on social media and more. And Wells, I guess you're specifically hoping to hear from listeners this week on this very subject, right?
Yes, definitely, David. Flooding top of mind for many Texans out there, obviously, with much of central Texas and portions south getting inundated with rain last week. And I don't know if you saw this, David, but it might not be over. Apparently, the next 48 hours could be critical in determining where a large tropical depression has its greatest impact. Yeah, AccuWeather forecasters say the system could bring flooding and strong winds to Louisiana or track farther west toward Texas. Apparently,
coming in from the other direction this time now.
That's right, yeah. So which path it takes could apparently largely depend on how much it strengthens over the next 2 days. So obviously a developing story we're keeping a close eye on. So with flooding once again potentially in the forecast, we are asking, what have you learned about flooding from living in Texas? We're casting a wide net online here and getting a lot of responses. One fascinating response here from Reddit. This via subreddit I didn't even know about until today, but a very timely one, the Kerr County Floods subreddit. One user writes that many people are willing to put their own lives and the lives of others at risk in dangerous areas with no desire to accept consequence for what follows when those areas are struck by a flood. And after reading up on the flood history of Texas, it's not a new problem either, this Redditor writes. The U.S. Geological Survey specifically mentioned in a 2003 report that people tend to believe each recent major flood is unprecedented due to the time gap between the present and past major floods. It's incredible that Texas, with all of its flood history, has a public awareness problem so bad that people would rather wait for a flood to hit and rely on a last-second alarm system than heed flood watches and warnings. and evacuate just in case. Returning to something that Redditor wrote there just a few moments ago, that report from 2003 saying that people seem to downplay the danger because of that time gap between major floods. I think that may be something that that may be going by the wayside as we see more and more of these incidents hit with, in this case, some alarming irregularity. Of course, lots of talk about these maybe more rural areas closer to the waterways. Big conversation unfolding on our Facebook page there as well. Interesting comment here from Gretchen Lindquist, who says, know which roads in your area are likely to flood and be prepared with alternate routes. Not long ago, I was on the east side of Houston when the East Freeway flash flooded. I turned around and got home safely. So good idea there to always have a sort of backup plan in mind. So now we'd love to hear from other folks out there in the audience. What has living in Texas taught them about flooding, whether it be preparation, warnings, evacuation, or helping your neighbors? Easy way to do it, and the way we'd love for y'all to do it, go to texasstandard.org/talk and record us a voice message that we can use on the air. Real simple, easy process. Just go there on your smartphone, texasstandard.org/talk, and press that record button. Just talk into your phone, and we can use that audio to share these stories of Texans, what they've learned, because unfortunately, we've had plenty of opportunities to learn from these incidents, and there's the potential that we may need to heed them more in the future. So again, that's at texasstandard.org/talk. We would love to hear our listeners' thoughts on flood response. And as I said, David, plenty more comments coming in here on the Texas Standard Facebook page there. Lots of people talking about the sort of political dimensions, other folks talking about the fact that, as I said a moment ago, these things seem to be happening with increasing regularity. So please, again, texasstandard.org/talk. We'd love to hear folks' opinions on what to do, what they've learned about flood preparedness living here in the state.
Wells Dunbar monitoring the talk of Texas. John Cornyn built one of the biggest fundraising networks in Texas politics, but now that Ken Paxton's the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, turns out many of Cornyn's biggest donors are sitting on the sidelines. What are the implications for what could be one of the country's most expensive Senate races ever? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more tomorrow. Hope you can join us.
Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Wooldridge, Adrian Killam, and the George Huntington family.